Во имя Отца и Сына и Святаго Духа. All right, dear brothers and sisters, we finally got to the second part of our rebuttal. We're gonna refute both sides of the debate which was done recently between Voice of Reason, we call him Voice of Heresy, who is recently caught as a wicked person who uses the church to seduce girls, not for marriage, not for anything, sex, unbelievable. And the other character, another wicked person, one of Dyer, gay Dyer's cult, the fringe orthobro cult, who is called Ubi Dyer. I don't call him Ubi Petrus. Petrus is the name of Saint Peter, Piotr, our divine apostle. He calls himself that, but what he is basically only Ubi Dyer. He is one of Dyer's lapdogs, just like Voice of Heresy is Lupton's lapdog, okay? So I don't distinguish between them. I don't take sides. Our religion is not a football team. So this, Westerners, I want to point out, don't take sides. Don't say our team won. This is not a football match. It is impious to think like that. No. You gotta look at the person. If he's a grifter, he grifts for his channel, how he behaves and everything. And you will know by their fruits if you represent your church or not. Very, very simple, actually, to look at those Westerners, YouTubers, and see how they behave. They're so open about it, okay? It's not like, you need to figure out their character. They're very open. They grift for their channels. They sell you mugs and t-shirts. Instead of this money you should give to the poor, you give to them to make a career out of our faith. This is condemned by all saints, okay? This is basic stuff. You don't need to be a genius for that, okay? And super chats. I will read your comment, your question, whatever, if you pay me money. Is this looks to you like something Christian, compatible with the faith? This is what that Wagner, that Aristotelian pagan does, okay? 2. As all of them, okay? They call you patrons, patrons, they call you members, not brothers, okay? You're numbers to them. So anyway, let's get straight to the topic. Now, as we mentioned in the last part of in the last part of the first part of our rebuttal, we stopped at the most holy of emperors, the baptizer of all the Roman empires and the pagans, Saint Flavius, Constantinus, Maximus, Magnus, Thrax, okay? You call him Constantine the Great, okay? The equal to the apostles, which the Latin Church, the Western Church, who dare calls itself Catholic and the one apostolic church, and so on. It didn't even venerate him. They spit on our holy emperors who convoked all the ecumenical councils and so on and so on. And they were the Christian authority on earth, along with the patriarch, with the Bishop of Rome, in a symphony. This is how the Christian authority works. Not the bishopry, not the papacy in isolation. That wasn't never in history such a thing. So both of them are ignorance. Both of them are arguing like Protestants, revisionist history. Nonsense, okay? So we're going to school them about the history. So let's move on. So after Saint Constantinus the Great, his sons, his first son from his first wife, the eldest son, was the holy Crispus. He was a great holy emperor, just like our father of church history teaches us, the Eusebius of Caesarea, the Palestinian bishop. Okay, you read his histories, the life of the emperor, and so on. He even made this allegory, the analogy of father and son, like the Father Yahweh, the one God, and his one Lord, his Son, Jesus Christos, the Christ. Okay? Like with Saint Constantinus and his son, Crispus. That's how holy they were. This is how holy they were. Okay? But, unfortunately, and he was, his son Crispus, he was taught by the greatest, one of the Holy Fathers, the teacher of Saint Constantinus the Emperor, the Holy Lactantius, the Latin Lactantius, who refuted all pagan philosophy in his works, made it systematically, destroying all of their schools, Aristotelianism, Platonism, everything, and condemned them, and mocked them, and taught the faith. And Saint Hieronymus, Jerome, he praised him for that, which, by the way, Saint Hieronymus, did himself, as all fathers condemned the Greek schools. So don't lie and defame our saints as if they're belonging to some kind of a Greek school just because you read some wise guy contributor in Wikipedia, or your elitist scholars from secular universities who label our saints as such. This is out of their own imaginations, okay? So, unfortunately, for Crispus, Fausta, the wife of Saint Constantinus, she fell to sin, and he wasn't her son, he was her stepson, so she wanted her sons, her biological sons, to inherit the throne, and she caused him to the death of Crispus. And then, afterwards, as the saints taught, okay, after that, Constantinus the Great, the Emperor Augustus, he punished her and let her die in hot water, okay, in hot bath water, okay, for what she's done, okay. Now, Constantinus had other sons from her. One of them was Flavius Constantinus, Constantinus the Younger. Okay, he fell to Arian heresy. At first, he was like his brother. Okay, Constantius, Flavius Julius Constantius the Younger. They both were pious, but they both fell to Arian heresy and sin. They fought civil dynastic wars over the throne out of greed and all, and they were punished, and they were usurped, and they were cut their line. And the young one, Constance, the Holy Saint Constance, the younger son of the emperor, the last, he was pious, and he brought Saint Athanasius of Alexandria from the exile, from the Arian exile. The Arian put him there, and he restored him. And he was a pious Christian according to the Orthodox faith of the Council of Nicaea, okay, and Constantinople later, okay. So he brought him from exile. He was a pious emperor, but the line had to be cut by God because of the sin and the heresy. So he was privileged to die as a martyr. He was usurped himself. And the Constantinian dynasty was cut, okay, but came the general Valentinianus, okay, Valentinianus the Great, the Emperor Augustus. He took over, saved the emperor. That is later. But from the line of Constantinus, there was a half brother of Constantinus, Flavius Julius Constantius. He was a half brother of Saint Constantinus. He had a marriage. He had a son who was legitimate, but he remarried a Greek pagan woman from a Greek pagan background who was an Arian afterwards. And they also contaminated the dynasty with Arianism. Okay? And because of that unholy marriage, their son was an antichrist, born an antichrist to them, who, as you probably know, it is Julianus the Apostate, okay, who brought the Platonism and the pagan Greek philosophy and idols and so on. He brought it back to the emperor. He tried to eliminate Christianity after it was the official religion instituted by Saint Constantinus the Great. Okay? So, he was an apostate, but eventually, read the histories of the saints about him. And eventually he was eliminated by the pious Emperor Jovianus. Okay? So this was the end of the Flavian Constantinian dynasty of Constantinus the Great. That was the end of it. It was cut because of the sins of the sons and Julianus the Apostate, the ultimate Antichrist. So the line was cut. Jovianus, who was a general, he restored it, the Christian faith. He was a pious emperor. And afterwards, then came the time of the Valentinian dynasty, of the Valentinianus the Great. Okay? So this holy emperor kept restoring Christianity, the Nicaean faith, Nicaea, to the empire, and rebuild the temples and everything. He was a very pious emperor, Valentinianus Magnus, and his son was Gratianus, another holy emperor. The saints talk about him too, okay, in their letters to him and so on. Gratianus married the granddaughter of Saint Constantinus the Great, Constantia. Okay? So there was a link right there between the Valentinian dynasty and the Constantinian dynasties. Okay? So Gratianus was one of the holy, actually, basically the only holy emperor from the Valentinian dynasty besides Valentinianus the Great, because his brother who co-ruled with him, East and West, the Western Emperor, the Eastern Emperor, so his brother Valens was co-ruler with him, but he was an Arian heretic, and then his son also, Valentinianus the Younger, he also fell to heresy. Gratianus was the one who kept the legacy of the Valentinian dynasty. Okay. Now, because of the sins of the Valentinian dynasty, just like before that, history repeats itself. Gratianus was usurped by a filth, let's not even mention his name, an usurper. But he was privileged himself also to become a martyr for it. So he took the sins of the Valentinian dynasty upon himself, and he was and he cleansed it from the sins as a follower of Christos, of Christ, and became a martyr. Okay? Now afterwards, okay, afterwards came one of the greatest dynasties. Now, before his death, Emperor Augustus Gratianus the Holy, he appointed a general, and that general was of that dynasty, the Theodosian dynasty. Theodosius Magnus, the Hispanic Celt, the Great. Okay? Now Theodosius was a very, very strict on Orthodox Christian faith. And this is what he did with his laws, the Theodosian Code, and so on, which was another prelude of the Justinianus Code, the Codex Iuris Civilis of the great Justinianus the Great, of the Justinian Thracian dynasty, later on, in the 6th century. This is the 4th century. Okay, so Theodosius was appointed by Gratianus, and he, after the punishment by God, he was killed, the Emperor Valens, the Arian, by the Goths in the war. He appointed Theodosius emperor to replace him. Okay? So that was the start of the Theodosian dynasty, who also married the Valentinian dynasty, because Theodosius married the daughter, the sister of Gratianus, the daughter of Valentinianus the Great, Galla. Okay, Galla was the daughter of the emperor, and they married to this dynasty. So Theodosius married to the Valentinian dynasty with his wife Galla, and he had pious emperors as sons. He was blessed, not Arian traitors, not all that. Honorius, Arcadius, Honorius, okay? Holy emperors they were, okay? Who had the relationship also, his son Arcadius and his wife Eudoxia, okay? They had a special relationship with Johannes Chrysostomus, okay? John Chrysostom, as you call in the West. They had a great relationship with him, which gone sour as Saint Theophanes, the confessor, the hagiographer, the monk, in his history later on, he said that the blame for the battle between the Saint Chrysostomus and what happened with the Emperor Arcadius and his wife, the Empress consort Eudoxia, was just a misunderstanding. It was instigated by their haters. They caused it to incite each one against the other. That's how it happened, according to the saint. Okay? Anyway, so their daughter was the Holy Virgin Pulcheria, okay? The Virgin, who kept her virginity all her life and was an ascetic, okay? A nun. She was a princess nun, one of the greatest that ever lived, what she did to the Christian faith. And her brother, her brother Theodosius the younger, Neos, okay? He was very young at the time, and she was the elder. She helped him, she co-reigned with him. She helped him at the beginning, and she got him a wife. She looked for a wife for him, who was holy. She chose Aelia Eudokia. She was of a pagan Greek background of Athens. She was an Athenian Greek, but she was converted to Christianity. And all that pagan philosophical and poetic rhetoric and education she got when she was young, she used it. Only the rhetoric, not the substance, not the pagan philosophy, like the Aristotelian tried to co-opt and try to play games and impose it on our faith. No, only the style, the rhetoric, the poetry and all that, she used it for the Christian faith, and she wrote beautiful poems and so on, and she wrote lives of saints and so on. And she was later made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, okay? And she was in a very beautiful relationship with the pious Jews there, not the rogue ones, the pious Jews there. And she built monuments and temples and so on in Jerusalem. And read about it. So he was another holy of the holy of emperors, Theodosius the Great, the first one, the founder of the dynasty, and he convoked the council. Who convoked it? A pope? No. The emperor who is the earthly vicar of Christos, of Christ on earth, with the bishop together. Those two, the emperor and the bishop of the east, and the western emperor and his bishop in the west, in the first Rome. The first Rome and the second Rome. As we mentioned already, Constantinople is equal to the first Rome because it's the new Rome by divine decree founded by Saint Constantinus. Okay? Two heads of the empire, two heads of Christianity, one in the east, one in the west. Equal to each other, working in a symphony. Okay? Now, he convoked the Council of Constantinople in 381, okay? Which clarified what already was believed and was articulated and manifested in the Council of Nicaea, as you say, in 321, which was convoked, of course, by Constantinus the Great. The Council of Constantinople clarified that also the Holy Spirit, Ruach HaKodesh, okay? He also was the third person of the Trinity, co-equal, co-eternal, and to worship as such, okay? Now, why wasn't it already mentioned? This is the Muslim claims and all that. Why it's not a development of doctrine. There is no such thing. In the Latin Church, in the later Latin Church, the apostate, which apostatized from the faith, yes, there is a development of doctrine. Not in our church. Okay? So, it was clarified because as in the Old Testament, the title of Adonai, my Lord, it is the title for the Christos, okay? The Christ, Adon, the Lord. But it is also in the plural. It is my Lords, Adonai, my Lord. So it signifies, as the saints thought also, that this is referred to the Christ, who is also always, as the saints thought, always he is with the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of his mouth, and so on. So together they, my Lord, okay? So that's why it is in the first creed of the basic creed, the Nicaean Creed, it wasn't mentioned because it was obvious that Christos is with the Holy Spirit. So it was the Holy Spirit already was included in him. Okay. So to clarify it, the Constantinopolis Creed mentioned and clarified that issue. Okay, with the Holy Spirit of God the Father and of His Son, the Christ. Okay, so he convoked that one. And his son, as we mentioned, Theodosius Neos, the younger, sorry, Zionist intruders again. Anyway, so where were we? Yes. And so, Theodosius the younger and his sister Pulcheria, the nun, the virgin, the saint, they were, as we said, they were descendants, you know, they were, how do you say that? Not direct descendants of Theodosius the Great, but they were the son and daughter of Emperor, as we mentioned, Arcadius, and his wife. I'm sorry, what's happened to me? And his wife, Aelia Eudoxia. Okay. So he convoked that emperor. He was a legislator of law. He translated and compiled his father's laws, the Theodosian Codex, and so on. He was a legislator, and he convoked the Third Ecumenical Council, the Council of Ephesus, okay, which condemned Nestorianism, and so on. So he was another holy emperor. He was a Roman emperor, Augustus, a holy Roman emperor, okay, who convoked the Ecumenical Council. It wasn't like you painted, heretics. The Greeks out there in the East call it Byzantine Empire. There is no such thing. It was never called a Byzantine Empire. It was a later concocted term by later historians who wanted to term the eastern part of the empire as such, to separate it from the west. That's all. They always do that and confuse people. I hate those nonsensical historical revisionism. You know, for what? Just like they call the Rus, which is the first, the prelude of the Russian Empire, the bigger, expanded Russian Empire. It is basically the same thing, the Russian Empire, but they call it Kievan Rus, because the center of power back then was in Kiev, okay, not in Moscow. But it is just a center of power. It was always only Rus. It wasn't called that way. Those were Rus states. Anyway, we're gonna call it. We're gonna talk about it later on. But right now, that was the Roman Empire who convoked those councils, who was in the seat of authority divinely appointed by Christ, the emperor. Okay, the emperor, divinely appointed, as we mentioned in the first part of the rebuttal, and who is bound by the Christian authority of his patriarch, okay, working in a symphony. The church and state, there wasn't a separation, okay? So this was Theodosius. All right, now, at that time, the Theodosian dynasty ruled over all the East and West. And they split their powers, of course, between the Roman Emperor and the Eastern Emperor, and they were of the same dynasty. So the Western authority of Rome and the Eastern authority of the new Rome, Constantinopolis, were both legitimate Roman dynasties and Roman authority. Okay? Empirical authority, okay, at that time. So Theodosius the Younger, he got ill and he didn't leave an heir, okay, to the throne. And he had daughters, 2 daughters. And one was Flacilla, and one was Licinia Eudoxia, okay? And she married to the Western emperor, who was Valentinianus, Placidus Valentinianus, who was very young at the time. She married him, and he was the son of the emperor who was married to the dynasty. He was a Magister Militium general, who was called Constantinus. Okay, so she was the daughter of him, and the daughter of Theodosius the Great, daughter Galla Placidia. Okay. Now that Valentinianus, who also made the edict, and for the benefit of Papa Leon of Roma, you know, the great, who made the Tom of Leo as you call him. He was impious emperor. He was a fornicator, self-indulgent, really a wicked person. And he was punished, and he was usurped by an usurper, Petronus Maximus, who was also a wicked, filthy man. And he forced marriage upon his wife. Okay? And she didn't want it. And she got him killed eventually. Okay? She invited the barbarian, the Vandals, to the emperor to sack Rome, and so on. It's a story, you please read it. She was married to the barbarian Germanics in Africa. She was taken there with her daughters, and so on. So this was the Western emperors. Those were was the period. It was a period of a number of Western emperors, okay, in the West. But in the East, which was the leading of Orthodoxy, of Christianity at the time, Saint Theodosius the Augustus, he didn't leave a male heir. So his elder sister, the Holy Virgin Pulcheria, she married, which by the way, this is her. She married a commander, a great commander, chosen by the Hellenic magisters of the emperor. He was chosen, and he was called Marcianus. And he convoked, and was a great relationship with Papa Leon, Pope Leo the Great. He convoked, and as you know, the history and the Tome of Leo, and so on. He convoked the Council of Chalcedon, as you say. Another Holy Eastern Emperor who convoked the Ecumenical Council with, of course, his Empress consort, Pulcheria, the Holy Virgin. Okay? And they fought all the heretics there, and so on. You can read about it. And so Marcianus was a holy emperor, and he married to that dynasty, and he convoked the Ecumenical Council of Chalcedon, which was the fourth Ecumenical Council, and the rest is history. Okay? Now, since Pulcheria was a virgin, she had an oath, a vow of virginity. Okay? She was a nun. Despite marrying the Emperor Marcianus, she never had intercourse with him. She kept her virginity to the end of her life. So they didn't have a male heir as well, just like the emperor before. So they adopted one, okay? And the chosen one, also by the Hellenic magisters, Aspar. And the second one, the Hellenic magisters, Aderbur and Aspar, they chose Leon the Thracian, Augustus Leon Thrax, okay? Also Thracian by blood. As we mentioned, it is the biblical Tiras, okay? From Thrace originally. That area, okay? So he was a great commander, but those Hellenic barbarian magisters thought they would make him a puppet ruler and they would call the shots. But he was very smart and divinely appointed with the help of God, with his angels. He toppled them and eliminated them, okay? And he had a son, and by the way, that Leon the Thracian, he was such a holy emperor. He was so pious. He always went to visit and honor and get the blessing of the holy monk Daniel Stylites, who was one of the Stylites, the monks who put themselves high on a narrow post to the sky and isolated themselves for long periods of time. He was a very pious monk. And he blessed him, and he honored him, and so on. Daniel the Stylite, as you say in the West. Now, Leon had a son, Leon the Younger, but he was very little, and probably already sick from childhood. And it wasn't his child, his grandchild. Okay? He didn't have a direct male heir. So he married his daughter Ariande to his magister, his commander, after conquering and expanding the empire more, after already the expansion of the Constantinian dynasty by God's blessing, and the Theodosian dynasty expanding the empire and converting the pagans. Also, the Isaurians were also a people there from the Cilician area in Anatolia. They were barbarians, and they were converted to Christianity. And he chose from there their leader, was named Zenon, Emperor Zenon, the Isaurian. Okay? Isaurian Zenon was a pious emperor. We're going to get to it. But he married to his dynasty, to the Leonid dynasty. to his daughter Ariande, also was holy. And they were guardians. He was a guardian of his son, Leon the Younger. Okay? He got sick and he died suddenly, and Zenon took over the throne of the emperor. Okay? And he was, at the beginning, was a pious emperor, very orthodox. And he struggled, and he was a very humble man, even though he was betrayed by his family members and by magisters. He was always forgiving, like a Christian. And he gave another chance. Okay? He was hated because of his origin, of his barbarian Isaurian origin. Okay? They were mountain people. So, he was a pious emperor, but at the end, he and the patriarch Achaeus, the patriarch, they came up with a Henoticon, which was a decree, which was trying to reconcile the Monophysites with the Orthodox faith, but in a very impious way, to sweep the differences under the rug, never solve anything, ignore it, and just unite them artificially. What that caused the Achaean schism, and that was a very terrible thing to do, and that's why the Emperor Zenon was punished by God, who not only cut his dynasty, but the western part of the empire fell into the Germanic Magogite barbarians. Okay? And the last legitimate Roman emperor there, by prophetic sign, he was called Augustulus Romulus, the little Augustus, which was the original title for the emperor, named after the first Emperor Augustus Octavianus. He was called the little Augustus, and the other part of the name was Romulus, who was the founder of the city of Rome, the pagan founder of the city of Rome, with his brother Remus and Romulus. They were the founders of the city itself, the eternal city, which was elected by God to be as such, the seat of the Christian empire. Okay, the first Rome in Italy. Okay, so that was a prophetic sign